Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm so excited today to share with you a beautiful being and a beautiful friend. Her name is Amy Sikarskie. Amy is a licensed vocational nurse. She's an energy therapist. She's a clairvoyant channel. And she's also the author of a couple books, Star-Seeded Ascensions, and this new book, The Ultimate Guide to Channeling, which I really love. So we're going to have a conversation today about channeling. So welcome, Amy. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. There's some really good energy, girl. I feel like we know each other. We've talked about this.
I know.
Every time we get together.
Well, there's a lot of excitement always. It seems like whenever we Zoom leading up to the call, it's almost like we're going on a roller coaster. It's like the energy's building and we're getting so excited. So it's always a pleasure to talk to you. And I'm really excited actually to talk about your story, your journey, about, how you ended up here. But what I first wanted to ask, just because I feel like there may be, newbies listening or beginners listening. Yeah. So my first question is really simple, which is basically like, what is channeling to you? What does that mean to you?
Right. Channeling is being able to discern and understand when there's energy or a message coming from a space outside of ourself or our consciousness, being able to process it and let it come through. There's different stages and ways in which we can do that. So a physical vocal channel typically will bring through light language or tones and also messages in the spoken language, spoken word. But there's many beautiful light workers that channel in through art, through poetry, which is also words, dance, movement, stories. There's a lot of different ways to channel, and the type of channeling that I do is through guidance and messages for comfort, peace, and clarity. Clarity is so important right now.
So just to clarify that, by clarity, when you say that, my sense is like we have a clear connection with our soul and higher self and the divine. Is that what you mean by that, or what does clarity mean to you?
Well, that is the way that you would get to the answers. But if there's any confusion around decision making, or let's say that something looks great on paper, but you can feel something is going on behind the scenes, or somebody says something, but you're like, there's something else here. Or for myself, it was like over the past year, there's this energy that kept coming up. What is that about? And when I got clarity, it was past life. It needed to be cleared.
Interesting.
So it's just getting deeper awareness with the answers so that it feels sound and true to us for peace.
That makes sense. Because I think people are awakening to the fact that we are multidimensional. And so when you awaken to that fact that, there are elements of you in different dimensions, higher dimensions, so your life and your life circumstances kind of take on a different perspective. You realize like, this issue or this challenge that I've been facing, there might be more to it than just surface level what I'm seeing and intuiting or sensing through my physical senses. That makes sense?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Cool. Well, so how did you get into this? Because we met quite a long time ago, right? We met, I think it would have been, 2014 on Instagram.
That sounds right.
It was a while ago, and I was making jewelry, and I don't think you were channeling yet at that time, although I could be wrong. Like, maybe you were just starting to get into it, but how did you get into this, and how did you start to channel and be aware that this was something that you were drawn to?
Yeah, so I believe in that time I was delivering messages, how people would say if they go to a reader, and it's called relay channeling. I would receive the message, sometimes put it in my own words, but just repeat it back or process it, digest it, translate it. And also I was doing some automatic writing. And I got involved, or I got started with this through Reiki, actually, through, my own crises of just being empathic and taking on too much energy, not understanding it. So learning about energy, then learning how to heal my energy, learning how to heal others. And what happens in that process is, our chakras strengthen, and each chakra organizes and works with energy through the Clair senses. So my Clair gifts turned on. I started getting downloads, which is just like a direct knowing. I started hearing messages, and I started going into my clients' past lives in healing sessions where it was like I felt like I bilocated or teleported, and there I was standing in this hologram. It was really quite fascinating. also to be able to share what was coming through and feel and sense and see that the energy in them processed or cleared out and get their feedback. So it was all about me trusting and going with what was coming in. And that's a huge part of channeling, because we don't, in fact, I like to not know hardly anything about clients in sessions. I just like to let it flow in, as you know, you do too. So that's how it started for me. And then I met my friend Nicole, I think in 2017 or 18. We met online as well through Metatron. He brought us together. So it's like Archangel Metatron. He helped you and I connect.
Metatron, we should say the connection there. So Metatron was the way Amy and I connected, because I had made her a Metatron necklace, I think, and I sent it to you, probably based on some Metatron connection that I saw you post, or so absolutely.
I'm like, he's amazing. So I met her through Metatron as well, but we ended up in the same city a few years later, and I got to know her, and she's a channel, and I asked her about physical channeling, and then I was like, oh, I think I could do that. So I took a weekend workshop where I had 3 questions, I think it was. I got all those answered without asking. It was part of her presentation.
Amazing.
And then I was ready to go, you know, because we just don't jump into this. There's a lot of regulation of our energy, boundaries, and discernment. And I had a few of those questions. They were answered. And because I have been working on myself energetically for a long while, I started with Reiki in 2001, I think it was. So my system was ready to go. And I'd already written Activating the Starseed, which is automatic writing channeled in that way. It was a very easy transition for me to go into physical vocal channeling, which we'll talk about.
Yeah, for sure. So when you're in your Reiki sessions very early on, could you sense, or were you just sensing energy, or could you sense like guides or beings in those sessions, or was it a progression? What was your experience?
All of it. First, it was sensing the aura and the chakras, the blocks and the flow, the strength, everything you would do when you're taking class for hands-on healing. And then I also worked a lot remotely, which upped my skill set. And remote and in person, as needed. Every session doesn't need it, but when I would go into these past lives and see holograms, I would start to utilize my Clair gift. And I do use my clairsentience and empathic abilities where I feel in my body. As a physical channel, that's, you know, our gift and strength. If we learn how to use it, it becomes a gift.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
So I would feel where there was a discomfort in my client, and once it released, it would release for my awareness in my body as well. So it started out that way, and I have seen guides. I do see energy with my eyes open, so, and closed. I've seen like ripples in dimensions and openings of cracks where light comes in, and I've seen psychic surgery where beings who do not look human have come into my session. I see them right there standing by me, working on clients. So that actually is a perfect segue, because another question I had for you, which I know the answer to, but I want to share it with everyone, is who do you channel? Or like, I know you've had different experiences with different beings, but who is your main being or beings that you connect with when you channel? So when I work in all sessions, I work with archangels for relay channeling, which is when I translate or let people know who's here and what they're saying with my eyes open and in my voice. And then when I go into physical channeling, that is when I work with the Council of Light. So the Council of Light is a broad collective of star beings. They work hand in hand with spirit guides, the oversoul. They work with elementals. They work with, you know, archangels, ascended masters, whomever is around to support the session. So if it's for an individual or if it's for humanity and the collective, they will have a few different spokespeople, we'll say, just like Sarai, that come through. And I can always tell when my voice changes just a little bit, or the cadence and the vibration, the tonality will switch. when I listen back, and of course in the process I can feel, oh, there's this spokesperson's here today. So this is who it is. It's the Council of Light, and I have my own team of guides that I called the Council of 13 in one of the books, because there were 12, but then I was a part of it.
Yeah.
I'm like,
count yourself in.
I need to be a part of this. Yeah, and I
Awesome.
did see, I shared about them in messages from the council, like what realm they were from and what they looked like. And then in fact, my higher self was very masculine, and it was a fun interaction to meet him, we'll say. In this conscious state of reality, I often connect with the female part of my higher self.
Yeah.
So that was, but I needed that. I needed to be a little bit more assertive at that point in my life.
For sure.
Clear masculine direction and structure.
So just to be clear, your spirit team and the Council of Light, those are two different like collectives, would you say that? Or
they are,
yeah.
But
there's some overlap.
Life,
yeah.
They work together. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. And so these beings that you were seeing, in terms of when you were saying within your healing sessions where they didn't really look human, would you say, because I obviously have a huge fascination with star beings now at this point in time, so would you say that those beings were star beings, or maybe part of your council? Or
I don't believe so. This was some time ago. The one that's coming through was like a praying mantis being who was a surgeon working on the brain of my client. And at first it kind of took me by surprise, but then he was like, or he or she, I don't know, was just kind of looked at me with like, are you kidding? Like everything feels the same. It's just that you're seeing me. Nothing's different. Yeah. So currently I've worked with their race many times, but I do feel for that particular session, they came in for my client. Oh, okay. And, cool. I'm feeling Syrian energy around right now. Yeah. So Syrians also, when they work with me, come through for a lot of meticulous psychic surgery of, the details. Very scientifically based is how I feel their energy to be. Okay. And, but you and I spoke in the past about how we really resonate at a home state from our own frequency with Andromeda. Yes, definitely. Well, that was another question I had for you, which was because when we first reconnected, which was this year, because we hadn't kind of like been in touch for a while, so many things were happening in our individual lives. And then when we reconnected, we had this, number one, we had a very strong resonance, but number two, then we had this realization like, oh, we have this connection to Andromedan beings. So you had said like, oh, and to be honest, that doesn't feel common. Like I haven't encountered a lot of people talking about Andromedans. We hear about Pleiadians all the time. We hear about certain star races, but Andromedans are like, it seems like not a lot of people talk about that. So what is your experience with Andromedan consciousness? Well, I was first introduced to the vibration of it and the history that I was from that space when I was in a reconnective healing session. Oh, okay. Yeah, I left the body and I started traveling through the cosmos, and they showed me a map, which I went and looked up later, and I was like, oh, that's just where I was. And the way that they pronounced it was Andromeda, and I wonder if that's, I don't know, sometimes they pronounce it that way. And so that was also around the time that the Council of Light started coming in, and I know that now because they do pronounce it that way sometimes when I'm channeling them. So that's when I think it started to become this like overlap. Right. Okay. So they're working with me a lot when it comes to the platform of working with the collective. And my team works with me more for they both help, but my team definitely, the 12, for my individual life with families and my own karma, that kind of a thing. But yeah, they shared with me about the history, because the reconnective energy was very star-based, and I think, I would say very Pleiadian-based, but I had a lot of questions in my heart and soul, and I didn't even ask it like in that session. I had just been thinking about it for 2 weeks, and I think they said, now's a great time. Now's the time to ask those questions, right? Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Well, then that brings up kind of a few more questions, because in your book you talk about the different forms of channeling. Like I think the different types, I think when people think of channeling, sometimes they just think of just vocal channeling, or just, when in reality there's all these different types of channeling. So it sounds like with your story that you've progressed kind of like from energy therapy or energy healing, through some automatic writing, and then the physical vocal channeling was kind of
where you're at now, which to me would be a more advanced form of channeling. But can you, do I have that right, or what are your thoughts on that? Because it does feel like a progression. When I think of me too, it feels like a progression. It doesn't feel like, oh, bam, overnight you're vocal channeling or physical channeling, right? So.
Right. Yeah, it's a progression, and within that is using runes or oracle cards. I don't use runes, but they're saying that. So tools, oracle cards, because that's a step into trusting the energy. Yeah. All of it is building up to being able to discern energy.
Yes, yeah.
Trusting the frequency when you get a message, like that. Like we're gonna go back to that word, clear and clean. Does this feel clear and clean, or is there something else here? So we would kind of like a detective ask further questions. If we're like, oh no, this is the card but there's something else here, let me turn over 2 more cards or 3 more cards, right? So we start to work with our intuitive abilities when we use oracle cards. I found that oracle cards and automatic writing kind of came in around the same time, because then you start trusting the energy flow. Automatic writing for myself was how I started letting the information. It was actually in activating the starseed. Metatron came in, he'd come in closer and closer and closer into my aura, holding space and telepathically speaking, and then I would type it out.
Right.
So that helped me to learn how to hold his energy.
Okay.
And
cool.
His energy is really strong, as you know. So
I always get very tall, like a huge tree in a forest, like very big, very tall.
Yeah, it's really strong.
Very unmistakable. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, I'm trying to think if I ever vocally channeled him, and I tried, but I don't think I could hold it at that point. As far as like how I do the Council of Light, but it all built up. So then I worked with the Council of Light, practicing with toning and letting them use my vocal cords and then merging with my body. So it's called physical channeling.
Okay.
And that is when they come in the body and use my physical body. So the voice changes and it becomes this sense of, people get an activation from it. It's like sitting in the presence of the energy of something that's come through the dimension is now grounded in the physical reality. And that's what really sets the difference. I think it sets it apart. So we get energy, we get information, we get healing messages, all of that. But when you physically channel and you're sharing that experience, all the light codes come in. And you and I just recently had the conversation with Sarai. I was feeling all of the energy processing through, all the emotions, all of the clarity, all this peace and love before the messages were spoken about. I was starting to feel it. And that's the difference with the physical channeling, is that it's more of a all-encompassing quantum experience, and then the words define it and explain it to us. Whereas in the other ones, you get the words and then the energy catches up with it.
Oh, okay. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that's making sense to me now as I'm kind of taking that in. Because you and I had talked, and maybe it was on your podcast, about how it's not that the words aren't important. They are important. But what's almost more important is that energy that comes through to kind of, would you say, realign? Like when you say activation, can you just describe to everybody, and light codes even, can you describe what you mean when you say that?
So activation, in the way that I just used it, was when I'm channeling energy for energy healing, guided meditations, or physically vocally channeling. I am streaming like an energy therapist, where the light comes in down through my energy field and out. So it emanates out, and it, you can think of it as shining like a flashlight. Sometimes it looks like sonar waves rippling. And then it greets the recipient's auric field, and if they're receptive, then it starts to massage, and then the energy can go in and fill them up with light, heal them, bring in awareness, flush out toxicities or blocks, and it lifts their energy system. And it's like scrubbing bubbles, I'm seeing. Really go in and clean and clear.
Dawn dish detergent and grease, like,
there we go. Exactly.
Well, Sarai talks about healing as being, healing is bringing a frequency into alignment. That's what she always says. So kind of what you're describing is that process of realigning with source energy or your soul energy or higher frequency than this, physical reality. And all our mental constructs around it, the 3D matrix, that kind of thing. So is that kind of is that another way of putting what you're expressing as well?
Yeah, it aligns it, because in that process, it's going to help you realign. And then you asked about the light codes, light language. I'm just invictive programming, and that helps with the DNA. So the light codes and the light language would be information, quantum information that is then absorbed into the body, the energy field, all aspects, but especially the DNA, to help rewire, reset, or reprogram. So sometimes it goes in and wipes out the old programming. Sometimes then it will bring in the new light codes will bring in the template for the body to start to grow or to assimilate and to flow into that new space of consciousness. And some people have huge and very intense activations, and others we have the integration process, and it could take maybe 3 months for it. And it's important that we allow it to naturally go how it needs to, because otherwise it's like frying the motherboard. Like your body can only handle so much.
That's so true.
Integrate.
Yeah. That's so true. So as you're saying that, what I'm seeing is that this like, I want to say integration, but this, I don't know if I guess that's the right word. I'll go for it. But that integration of that new frequency or higher frequency actually shifts the being's perspective of like how they see themselves and how they see the world. And in doing so, then you could say, make different decisions that are maybe more in alignment with source energy or oneness. I don't know where that came from, but that just like came through as you were speaking. Does that make sense to you? Okay. Yeah.
Yes, because the example I'm hearing is fear. Yeah. If there was a frequency of fear around whatever in the system, and it could be ours, or it could be from another life, or it could be ancestral, could be from the collective right now, whatever. The energy is going to go in and talk to it and say, okay, what are you doing here? Or like, I'm hearing it sing a lullaby, like calming the fear.
Right.
And bringing it so that this frequency that was really dissonant and like static or nails on a chalkboard, just like sounds so uncomfortable, calm it down and soothe it with light. So there's so many ways to look at it, but when we are at peace and our system is regulated, that allows us the space to feel more comfortable. It's that place of also feeling protection and love, like you're comforting from spirit around in our higher self. But when there's inflictions, is what they're saying, inflictions of dissonant energy in our field, that's when we can feel, I'm hearing dismayed and disarray, like things just are discombobulated. Everything is a dis here. Disenchanted.
We're getting dissed.
Like all the words from the council. So it's like the opposite of what we want. Health, right? Yeah.
Because just as you're saying too, when you're talking about fear, like often when I think of that energetic of fear, it is a state of disconnection from your higher self, because you can't really, like, your actual physiology gets into this place of just survival, like just needing to survive. And so the capacity to connect in with your higher self and soul and your guides, even just your intuitive awareness, it's almost like it's not online. And so life can kind of go downhill fast in that state, right? Because, you're making decisions from that place, you're taking action from that place, and you're not really connected, to source, to higher self. So that makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah.
One last little vision I'm getting on this topic is when you said that you make decisions, they also show me or lack of. So that freeze,
Yeah.
So we just freeze. Yeah. And do we freeze for 3 days, 3 months, 3 minutes, So that actually is that disconnection that takes us offline.
Definitely. And then that's huge.
No guidance.
3 years, 30 years.
Yeah.
A lifetime. Yeah, for sure. Although I'm sure, in the case of the lifetime, I'm sure there's lessons in that as well. But, it's recognizing that. It's like, what state I'm in? What state am I in? So, which I think we'll talk about in a second. But just let me check my notes here. So, because I wanted to go back for a second to discernment, because that is like flashing is something huge to talk about, right? Because when people are interested in channeling, or when they're interested in developing their intuitive abilities, one of the questions I receive often is, well, how can I tell? One common question is, how can I tell between the voice of my intuition and the voice, like my own head, the thoughts in my head? But another one that's even more concerning for people is, if I'm tuning in to beings in other dimensions, then how can I tell? How can I discern whether they are, higher frequency beings, or whether I'm connecting with a being that might wish to harm me or inflict, something unwanted onto me? So can you talk a little bit about discernment and how you discern when you're tuning in to these subtle energies, subtle frequencies, subtle dimensions? How can we discern, who we want to work with, or who we feel guided to work with? Or if we sense a being there, how can we sense that they are, a positive energy or a positive force?
Right. There's so much to share here. First of all, we're all intuitive, and we all have had messages and guidance our whole life. Mm-hmm. And it's like, do we choose to listen to that or not? So that's our compass, mm-hmm. our intuition. When we open to spirit in a clear, conscious way, and we're asking, where is this coming from? That's where we're going in a different path with it, we'll say. But let's go back to the beginning of when we want to access a higher consciousness or state. It's really important to have a clear energy field.
Yes.
So that we recognize, maybe what I'm hearing is a program within my aura, mm-hmm. a past life, a dissonant belief system mm-hmm. that's coming through. Mm-hmm. So first of all, it's the proper care of our own energetic field, mm-hmm. and I'm hearing the biology within us. Mm-hmm. So doing our own healing is very, very important as a channel, and then maintenance of that and consistency with it. Next, we'll fall into setting the space. So cleansing your energy field mm-hmm. and cleansing the room around you through your own practice of sacred care, of sacred space. Mm-hmm. When we do this, it's going to let us know intuitively with our physical body and our energetic senses, does this place feel peaceful? Mm-hmm. Does it feel heavy? Mm-hmm. Or does it feel light? Mm-hmm. Right? So getting an awareness of, how do we connect with energy? Mm-hmm. What does the space around us feel like? What are my emotions even? Mm-hmm. And if there's an excess of thoughts, what is that? Mm-hmm. Number one, the guides won't want to overwhelm and bombard us. Yeah. So if there's an excess of thoughts, it's time to clear those and ask, where did it come from? Mm-hmm. Let it go. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, like, sometimes there can be, many of us have entities around that are not guides that are talking, mm-hmm. and we get those random thoughts. And it's like, where did that come from? So asking is always important. And your higher self is only going to bring through messages that are supportive and in love. Mm-hmm. Could be a little, self-care of tough love, maybe. Yeah. Like, get your butt in gear. Or, come on, you've got this message for 3 weeks. What's going on here? Yeah. But any detrimental thoughts are not your team. Yeah. They're not your soul. Mm-hmm. It could be your own. It could be like words and messages from the subconscious programming, or it could be other energies. Mm-hmm. So first and foremost, it's like clearing and getting clear on what's your consistent experience in life, mm-hmm. before you try and open up really mm-hmm. to other more advanced forms of channeling. But the basis where I would start would be meditation. Mm-hmm. Make sure your emotions are clean. Mm-hmm. Like, you don't have a lot of trepidation. Fear is going to knock you out of alignment completely. Mm-hmm. Yes, so if you're definitely in a fear state, mm-hmm. yeah, that's like the opposite. Yes. Is the antithesis of channeling. Fear is the kryptonite to yes, it. So make sure you get all of your questions answered, and that you've observed others channeling or had classes mm-hmm. for the support, so that it can calm any fears. Mm-hmm. And it's not to placate. It's like, no, there's reasons, and mm-hmm. we have boundaries and discernment, which we're talking about here. Mm-hmm. So you would start with your own energy and the space, and then the oracle cards are a great place to start, because mm-hmm. you're not letting any entity in your energy field. Oh, that's such a good point.
Honestly, until I read your book, I wouldn't have thought of that. Like, it makes so much sense to me now, and when I look back on my own journey, I can see that, like I've told you before, the slow progression. But I can see how I was guided in that. And I think it's so great that now, we have your books, so that it's in paper. Like, we can kind of see, someone can read about that. Because I feel just lucky that I was guided obviously in that slow progression. But I wanted to ask you a question about the space, because you do, in your book, you do talk a lot about the importance of preparing your space and preparing your energy. Those are kind of in the preparing to channel section. And I wanted to ask because, so let's say we don't clear our space and we don't pay attention to that. Would you say that the energy of the space attracts beings or attracts energies that are of like vibration? So in other words, if I don't clear my space, or if I'm in like a chaotic environment, technically would that energy field attract beings or energies that are on that wavelength? And so if I open myself, that's what I'm being exposed to. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I totally get your question. There's a couple different answers to it. First, if there's any geopathic stress, like electromagnetic or energy of the earth and land, poltergeist activity, or anything like this, that's going to throw your reading off, because we think of our system like a satellite. We're receiving information and we're sharing information with God and our team, source energy. So it would put it so that it would be staticky, and we might get it just won't be as clear. It'd be a little bit more challenging to understand. So that can create confusion as a channel. Really, it can. But secondly, if there are energies around that could be emotions, thought forms floating, or spirits, what's going to happen is, if when you open up, there's a stronger probability that you're actually going to sense and read that energy.
Oh, I see what you mean. So it's almost like, and I think of this often with channeling, is it's all about resonance. So it's like you're receiving, or you're tuned in to wherever you're most resonant with at any given point in time, which is why clearing your space and clearing yourself puts you at a higher resonance, and then you're opening up to a higher frequency.
Yeah.
Is that how you would explain it as well, or anything to add to that?
Definitely. And there is something to add, that those who are advanced in their work, we can go into places. It's not easy, it's not fun, but we can. It's work. We can go into heavy places and expand our aura and fill it with light, and ask the team to come in. So when we work with large groups, and maybe we're going into a public building, and we try to clear and clean and prep it, but there's a lot of activity there.
Yeah, definitely.
The way that we set it up is our aura, and expand it out so that the space in our aura can be kind of like, what am I seeing? I'm seeing the boardroom where the guides come in and they're hanging here, and then they can talk to us, and we're not interacting with anything beyond the aura. But when you're in your own home or your office, I mean, look at the space of the room. Let's just take care of the whole room, right?
Yeah,
so
definitely.
it becomes kind of different in that way.
Okay, cool. One thing in your book that I loved, an exercise that I did, was you were saying that if you're unsure in terms of discernment, like you're sensing a being and you're not sure about it, you can request that anyone interacting with you must be introduced to you by archangels and pass through a golden light. I love it. And I have to tell you something funny. I was like, this was an epiphany to me. And I was like, I'm going to do this exercise with Sarai, because all of a sudden I was like, I hope she passes this test. If not, I'm in big trouble. Anyways, she did pass the test. But that's just something I wanted to mention to anyone listening, is if you sense a being, if this is new for you and you're sensing a being and you're not sure, calling upon that higher dimensional, high frequency, angelic, archangelic energy as kind of your protection, and tuning yourself to that. Because in your book you also talk about gatekeeper guides, and this feels, as I'm talking about it, kind of like an element of that, relying on your team to be kind of gatekeepers for the beings that you interact with. So when you're talking about gatekeepers, first of all, do you want to describe what a gatekeeper guide is? Because I just loved, when I read it, I knew exactly what you're talking about, although I couldn't remember anyone putting it into words before. So why don't you tell us what a gatekeeper guide is?
To me, it's like a bodyguard, and my gatekeeper guide came in when around probably 2014, probably like right around when we met, because I was starting to open up to more entities or spiritual beings of the star races, and there's a lot of chaotic activity there. Some are malevolent and some are malevolent. So my gatekeeper stepped in and was like, you're going to be advancing into a new space. I didn't know what way at that point. You need to have more protection and guidance around. So basically that was, how do I want to say, riffraff. It would keep the riffraff out, like off limits. You're not able to come talk through this channel or come anywhere near her. And I really, really sense that. Now, the only time when I've had things is when it's attached to a person in the physical that I'm interacting with, a client or somebody. And my gatekeeper, and I guess whoever's in my team, everybody, shows me. I totally get a heads up. I can see the energy. I try not to look at it because I don't really want to get a good vision. But I can see the mischief or the entity or energy that's having ill intentions. And it's like this heads up where, okay, for your protection, that is there. Do not interact. Now I'm going to have protocol. But this is all very advanced. I don't think most people will, you know what I'm saying?
I know. I'm trying to keep it on the beginner level. And so,
that's okay.
We might have we might have to have more than one interview. I'm thinking like, we're going to have like another whole like interview to get into it. But I loved the gatekeeper concept, because when I was first getting into mediumship and starting to do demonstrations like at the church in front of an audience, I would very, very clearly see and sense a guide who is kind of lining up the loved ones on the other side. And I would know, like, even an hour or two before the demonstration, I would know exactly how many readings were going to be given. And I would see them being lined up, but they weren't close to me. It was interesting. They were always kind of like over there or in the next room and be like, okay, we're lining them up. So when you were writing about gatekeepers, I was like, I have a gatekeeper. I know what she's talking about. And it was interesting because it is like a bodyguard. Like they kind of keep the beings, you know, at arm's length, basically. Because maybe, especially if I'm thinking if you're working one-on-one with someone, that you are probably interacting with their beings that are around them. But it's not like you want to really start blending with them like you do Council of Light, right? So I'm sure your gatekeeper is the one that, you know, maintains the right distance. So
yes,
I love
there's another form of channeling that I do not do, and so it's not in the book because I'm not an expert on it. But it's physical mediumship.
Yes,
and that is where they would let a human, we'll just say ghost, for those who are listening, come into the body. Yes, but that's a whole other advanced level that it doesn't resonate with me and my team and how I work. So there is no need for them to get that close, right? Because then it, again, can create dissonant frequency around and kind of make it static electricity. It's like, you know, just flipping through the channels and seeing the fuzzy on the TVs, you know. So that is why they keep them back a little bit, I would assume.
It made so much sense. What's that?
How did you connect then with when you were doing?
So I was just aware, like I would look clairvoyantly and it was just like there was a middleman between me and the loved one. So it was almost like, okay, I could feel and sense them organizing them, lining them up. Knowing, like giving me great comfort because I knew ahead of time it was all organized. Nobody's going to rush me. Like, it's not going to be like, okay, I get up at the front of the church and there's like 5 people and who am I going to go with first? It wasn't like that at all. It was like, okay, we got them all organized. They're all in a line. We're only going to let one step forward first. So yeah, I just didn't have a word for it. So when I read your book, it was so cool to have a term for it. And there was a few things like that in the book where I knew exactly what you're talking about, even though I had never read about it before or had a term for it. So, so we've talked about preparing to channel, because I wanted to ask you about that. So when we're just getting into this and we're preparing ourselves, we've talked about preparing the space. We've touched a little bit on preparing yourself, so clearing your field, running energy through your chakra system. Is there anything else? Am I missing anything? Because it's like what I feel like you're talking about is just, we've touched on it a little bit, but getting yourself in the right resonance or the right receptivity to be connecting with, you know, higher frequency beings, basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's about calibrating and breathing and getting centered and at peace, like a still, calm way of it. And then in whatever form or fashion you're channeling, you start to make that interaction and open to it.
Right. So maybe if you're just beginning, you have your oracle cards or your runes or your pendulum or whatever divination tool, and then a step up from that. I'm trying to be clear and help everyone recognize that it's almost like a stepping stone. So then relay channeling or automatic writing, and then starting to speak as a more advanced form. So just slowly almost calibrating yourself and getting used to these energies and how they feel when you interact, so you can have that discernment.
Yeah, and sometimes it's nice to have questions ahead of time.
Yeah.
And I would, like you mentioned earlier, working in professionally or consistently and giving readings before you get into physical vocal channeling will support you.
Definitely, yeah.
There's so much that we learn about energy navigation, our own system, the beings that we're working with, the delivery of messages, the peace and confidence that we might need for if something comes in and we're like, what is that about?
Yeah.
And that's the thing, we might not know, but they know.
Yes.
Or maybe they don't, but they will soon enough.
Yes, definitely. So one big thing, huge question, or at least just like double high five, that you mentioned in your book that I don't hear talked about, so I was so excited that you talked about it, was the importance of lifestyle. The importance of lifestyle. So can we talk about that? Because it's so overlooked. So by lifestyle, what I'm talking about, guys, is your day-to-day habits, your diet, do you move or not? How much are you sleeping? Are you getting out in nature? Do you have clean water, clean air, like all of those things? So can you talk? Because I'm just big on that. It's been so huge for me. So I wanted to thank you for putting that in your book, and also to ask you, what are some supportive lifestyle choices we can make when we're interested in channeling and becoming a better channel?
Right. Well, you mentioned a few.
Yes.
So it's the consistency, right?
Consistency. Yes. Yeah.
You want to be able to be clear with what's happening. So if I'm emotional, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But I need to know, where is this coming from? Is this mine? Is it biochemical, hormonal? Is there something really going on? Let me get clear with that. Or is it not mine? Am I psychically picking it up? Am I empathically? Have I absorbed this and now, it's running through me?
Yes.
So that's important. So every day, an awareness, a conscious awareness of your energy and where you are, and be open and free. Like if I'm having a day, I share, I'm having a day. Like,
yes,
this is mine. I'm dealing with stuff, I got to figure it all out. And so when we think about just normal daily practices, if our physical body is suffering and out of health, if we're in a state of dis-ease, it's going to be really hard to be clear and present in an energetic way, and vice versa. If we're all frazzled and our chakras are overworked or what have you, then our digestion starts to, suffer and all of this. So we really should not forsake one part of ourselves to only focus on another. We are mind, body, spirit, soul. We're all of it. And so the daily maintenance and practice, the support for your physical health, your mental health, very, very important. And then additionally, just the consistent awareness of what space am I feeling? Like, where am I in? And I think a lot of empathic, sensitive, intuitive channels are consciously aware. Like, I'm always having this, I don't know if it's a conversation or I'm just always aware, always, of my energy. Am I in a mental space? Am I in an emotional space? Like, am I in a meditative space? Is there an extra frequency here? And that's important as a channel, because otherwise we're going to have to take extra time every time we go into channeling. Like, am I going to clear for the week now because I didn't keep up on it? Let me sit for 2 hours. Or did I maintain it as things came up in my day? Right?
Yes, definitely.
It does get uncomfortable once your system is very pure and you're psychically in tuned, like a fine-tuned instrument. You're calibrated to energies. it is so uncomfortable to feel something hanging around and sitting there.
Yeah, definitely.
It's like the anxiety or the knot in my solar plexus, or this, I have to say something, whatever it is, I cannot let it linger. So even if it's like on my to-do list, at least if I write it down, I've told the energy, okay, I've got you. I'm going to get to you in 3 days.
Yeah.
But I have, like I hear you.
So what I'm also sensing to just talk about too, as you're saying that, is like the importance of being able to, you talk about feeling your energy, and I would just wanted to tack on to that, the importance of being able to be in your body and feel your physical body as like an intuitive instrument. And I think you can only do that. Well, maybe part of that, I should say, is taking good care of your body or doing your best with that. Because what I was getting is that sometimes when you're sensitive, at least I've experienced this, and I know others who have, there's a tendency to disconnect from the physical body because of what you're sensing. Like it's almost like too much. So to be able to bring that energy back down into the body, to honor the body, to honor all your feelings, whether they're physical, mental, emotional, that just kind of came through to tack on to what you were saying. Just like to almost to practice feeling your energy on a day-to-day basis and taking inventory of where you're at and what might be affecting you. Maybe even journaling about it, that kind of thing.
Because I feel there's a couple of things here. One, they say like working with a somatic therapist would be good.
Yes, I do that on a monthly basis. I should just say.
Perfect.
100%. Yeah, I'm big on that. I recommend it to everybody. Yeah.
It's so important. Yeah. And then, because if you leave your body, it's like you've left your operating system and you walked out of the control room. And what's happening, you have all these programs and frequencies talking to each other, and the hardware and the motherboard is trying to process the programming, the frequency, the intel coming in, but it doesn't know how. So it just becomes really chaotic. It's not cool to do that to our physical body, and that's what will lead up to more disease, because then the body will start to physically have symptoms and share with you, hey, like I'm seeing like a flashing red light, SOS, like an alert, something's going on here. What did you ignore? Why did you leave your control room? When things are coming in, we need to process this or work through it. So it's important, because we have this body. It's important to take care of it.
It is, and that's actually leading me to another I wanted to ask this so badly. Is this morning I was thinking of it because I was watching an interview with Helene Wabe, who's the author of The Science of Channeling. And so she was talking about some of the physiological impacts of channeling that we can experience. And one of them was a mineral deficiency. And the interesting thing when I watched that interview is that 1 or 2 days before I'd found out that I'm iron deficient, and I was like, so, I've been trying to eat all these. I'm taking a supplement, but I'm also trying to consume a lot of iron-rich foods. So I just wanted to ask you, in your experience, are there any physiological effects or repercussions, or are there things that maybe like this, does our body need more minerals when we're doing a lot of channeling, or are there needs that our actual physical body has in terms of doing this work? What are your thoughts on that?
I think so. And it's interesting because I didn't know that from like scientific space, but intuitively I did.
Yeah.
So over the past few years, I just, I go and get my regular blood work done and see where I'm at, take supplements, electrolytes, all of it. And sometimes I'll be called, I don't know, I do those IV infusions and so, it is important, because we're bioelectrical beings, and this vessel, if you're dealing with other frequencies, you want to be able to hold it in a smooth, balanced way. But beyond just channeling, like it's important overall for our mental health, all kinds of health, our emotional state, our physical body. But yes, the better care we take of ourselves, the more important. And when you're channeling, you're working with energy, so energy is energy, and the bioelectrical aspect of it is important.
Yes. So this is just one more question then on that wavelength, after you channel, because I find after I channel, sometimes I do feel really depleted. Sometimes I feel like an energizer bunny, but sometimes I also can feel depleted. So, do you have any thoughts on that, or like? Same thing.
I have to say the same.
So we just need to be aware of our state and just giving our body what it needs, whether that's rest or more minerals or just taking good care. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I feel like the depletion will come in if I don't have those minerals.
Right.
Or I haven't ate, or, I just need more physical energy reserve, because we are doing so much when we channel. We're balancing.
Yeah. I was going to ask you that, like, how much energy does it take? Because to me, I'm like, this takes a lot of energy, and I wanted to ask your experience if you have the same experience.
Yeah, and some days it's smoother than others. Some days they come in stronger than others. I think it's like, oh, her body's tired. Maybe we only come in at like 40% versus 80 or what have you. But what's important to share here is that I'm present as you are, and we're holding space. Like we sit up. I mean, I'm not sitting. We sit up. We sit up. I mean, when I channel, I'm like in a proper posture, because that helps the stream come in. So although I might say I can feel their light, feeling the physical body, you still need the physical reservoir of energy to maintain certain things with the physical body. So then I'm also consciously aware of what's happening. So my mental field is activating in a very unique way, because I'm aware, I'm observing, but I'm not thinking.
Yes.
It's like I'm observing, it's like I'm watching or I'm listening, but I'm not using my mental mind to dissect everything. It's just a whole way of doing this that you practice is how you get there.
Yeah, definitely.
But, so it's all encompassing, and then you have the emotional body. So basically, like, as a channel, you're aware of every part of your being. And you're also aware of the entities or the beings, the light that comes through you. Just like Reiki, we're aware of us. We're also aware of the healing frequency. But when we channel a physical channel for messages, we add on to the other aspect of, what are they saying?
Right. Yeah. There's a lot going on.
Yeah. So we really should have proper care and nutrition of the physical body as well.
Have you ever had like a brain scan? I forget what you call it. Like, have you ever had that when you're channeling? Because I've always been so curious, like, what's actually happening in there?
I've been so curious, and I have not. So if anybody out there has access to the equipment and technology,
measure us.
we are here.
Measure our brains. Yeah, definitely. Let me see. So just a couple more questions, because these are questions from some people in my Patreon community and a client. So Michelle asks, are there portals that facilitate channeling? And actually, this was in your book. By portals, what she means is she has a collection of crystal bowls, and she feels like when she plays those crystal bowls that she's more intuitive. So she was describing them as a portal for channeling. So
interesting.
That's that is kind of in your book, but did you want to just speak about that for a moment? Because you have crystal bowls behind you, so that's a good sign.
I'm glad you clarified, because there's different types of portals.
Yeah.
So yes, sound opens up frequency and space for clear energy, just like liquid water flowing through. I see information, codes, energy of like, let's say like emotion or strength, where you can feel it, flows through in sound. It also regulates the chakras and calms the nervous system. And speaking about brain waves, that is what sound therapy does, is it brings us into a receptive state, more of a meditative space in the brain waves. In fact, I would use crystal bowls when I am a hypnotherapist, and when I would have people drive to my office, which was at my home, it's my home office, and they had to get through all the traffic, and they're all frazzled, and I'm like, oh, let's bring some science in. I would always play the bowls for them if I could see that they needed help just calming the system. Yeah, settling in. Now, hypnotherapy, meditation, channeling, we all go to the same space with the brain waves. Right. So it's absolutely accurate, like totally perfect. And if you want to call it a portal, because it opens the experience and the opportunity and the expression for the energy to come in. Absolutely. Yeah, I actually love that she called it that. I thought that was a beautiful terminology, and she actually sent me a video of her playing them, and I was like, definitely, I was feeling that peace and that calm and that resonance. Okay, and then one last question. Crystal asks, is telepathy different from the Clair abilities, or are the Clair abilities a way of receiving telepathy when you're channeling?
That makes sense.
Yeah, so funny. I was just talking exactly about this last night because I'm prepping to teach on the Clair gifts starting next week. And oh my gosh, so telepathy isn't like typically part of the Clairs, you know,
right.
but we use it. It should be.
Yeah.
It really should be. There's no word Clair in front of it.
Yeah.
But so it's claircognizance, but claircognizance is that direct knowing. And it's like, oh, I just know this. Telepathy, you get it. Like you're like what am I saying? Like a typewriter, like the words go in your mind. You can see the stream of consciousness come in.
Yeah.
So, okay, so repeat it again. I want to.
Yeah. So she asks, is telepathy different from the Clair abilities, or are the Clair abilities a way of receiving telepathy? Either when you're channeling or so.
I think it's different. I really do. Everything has to be clean and clear, but the Clair gifts are, they go hand in hand, like it's a pairing.
Yes, yeah, that's what I was feeling too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because when I'll just speak from my experience for a second.
Yeah.
When I'm giving a reading versus when I'm channeling, it doesn't feel the same. And I would consider channeling to be more telepathic communication from, it's almost like, you know, when I have that blend of I think you call it a merge. Do you call it a merge? I call it
a merge.
I call it a blend, but it's the same thing. When that blend happens, then I'm just aware of this kind of, I don't even know if it's telepathy now that I think about it. I'm just aware of communication. Let me put it that way. Whereas if I'm giving a reading, I see mostly clairvoyance and I feel. So I don't know.
They blend. Similar.
Yeah, they blend together.
It blends, and the messages that you're getting are telepathic communication, but Sarai is overlapping you. So it's like you put your heads together and you can hear what she's thinking, basically.
Yes, definitely.
And then it comes through. That is telepathy.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It's always so fun to talk to you, and I love the energy that unfolds when we're together. So how can people get in touch with you? How can we find you? I'll put a link to your book in the description below of this video, but what are some of the ways that we can get in touch with you?
Yeah, so my website, amysikarskie.com, and Instagram is so easy for me just to pop on there. So I'm on Instagram more often than anywhere at Amy Sikarskie. Let's see what else. I have a YouTube channel as well for all kinds of stuff, channel messages and everything. So, and then my podcast, Spirit and Soul Healing Podcast, is available on all apps and platforms. Then I also have a new podcast, In the Flow, with Amy and Layla, where we just talk candidly about everything for, healers and light workers. So there's some different areas where we can connect, but for like one-on-one connection or classes, if you go to amysikarskie.com, it will lead them everywhere. And then I want to share that my new book the Ultimate Guide to Channeling, is now out on Audible. So just really.
And it's like number 3 in the, what was it, in the category ESP or?
Yeah, like right now at time of filming, it's new releases.
Yeah.
So it hasn't even really released, but by the time this releases, it'll be out. And it's number 3 in ESP. So
amazing.
I was so excited for that. So thank you, everybody.
Yeah, you can see how much I like it too. You can tell how much I like a book by the number of Post-it flags are on it. So this is a winner, everyone. It's a winner. It's 5-star. All right. Thanks, Amy. We'll talk to you again.
Thank you.